For 2022. Welcome to everyone in the chamber, elected members and staff, and to everyone on the Zoom this morning. Kia ora. I'm going to kick off with a karakia. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E he aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hohu, ti he Māori ora. Any apologies? Councillor Piddington for lateness. And te wera. Any identification of items of urgent business or matters of minor nature? No. Any declaration of conflicts of interest? Can't imagine there'd be anything for the paper we've got today. My chairperson's report, pretty brief, but since the last meeting in November, I've attended a variety of meetings on a variety of topics, including the Women's Wellness Centre, the Joint Local Alcohol Policy Review Committee, Canterbury Biodiversity Champs, OTOP, the Geraldine Community Board, City Hub Steering Group and Community Advisory Group, and the usual council, tenders and procurement, people and performance, and other council meetings. I'd like to move. Thank you, Councillor Wills. All those in favour? Right. Thank you. We'll move on to confirmation of the minutes. This is page 6.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Parker. All those in favour? Thank you. And on to our report for the meeting. Paul, are you going to come and? Welcome, Stu. So thanks, Paul. So we've got the report on the BCA accreditation assessment, and it looks like we did okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just present the report as read and be available for any questions. But I'd just like to point out that it was a good result. It's a tough corner of the business. Doesn't often, you don't often get positive stories coming out there because we hold the rule book, so it's a difficult space to operate in. So it is good, or I feel very pleased today to bring this report to the attention of the committee and just share a good news story, really. I've asked Jason to come along, and if councillors do have any questions, I'm sure Jason will be happy to chip in and hopefully have something to say as well.
I didn't have a question, just a comment. I thought it was interesting to see that there were a couple of areas where a little bit of work needed to be done, but it was actually managed to be completed during the time of the assessment, pretty much.
That's right, Madam Chair. Yeah, it was
really good.
I mean, I've been through a couple of these and they can be a bit of an ordeal. It is a deep dive. They spend a week going through your
looking through your
bottom drawer, looking for dirty little secrets. And these are all GNCs, as we call them, these non-compliances. They're a very minor nature. So it was just, it's actually quite a positive, reassuring exercise for the team to go through, I think, as well. So,
and give the community confidence too.
That's right.
That things are being done correctly. So no further comments or questions? I'm happy to move that report, that we accept that report. Oh, you've got questions, sorry. I'm terribly sorry. I can see it.
I just want to add some context to it as well. So correct me if I'm wrong, you're going through a significant phase of massive increase in terms of consents and the work and activity that you guys are getting across, while also then having this audit. It adds a lot, it shows a significant more value to what it's done and also the outcome.
Thanks, Councillor Burt. I think the consent numbers, I think, are steady. Yeah. The workload on the team is high. They do have to maintain business as usual while this audit is undertaken. Yeah. I think I'll ask Jason, have you got any comments to make about what Councillor Burt just mentioned?
Yeah, thank you, Paul, and thank you, Councillor Burt, for those comments. It is a difficult time and has been for BCAs across the country for some time now, and even just listening to the news this morning about the difficulties of just sourcing building materials themselves. There's so many things currently that are impacting the building industry, and our part that we play in it is just, dare I say, a small part in the process. But in terms of the accreditation and the result, it is and does also show the benefits of the ongoing internal audits that we conduct every month. So our team, we go through all of the requirements throughout the course of a year. So in the same manner that IONS do when they come and do their assessment every 2 years. So we do that monthly. And so what that has told us and has been reiterated by the lead assessor from IONS is that our monthly audits and our checking of ourselves has proven to be very fruitful and is a direct result of the good, or rather the amount of non-compliances that were actually found, as Paul suggested, very minor in nature, which they are, and 2 of which were resolved during the course of the audit. So we're just putting our plan together to resolve the 5 outstanding. That will go back to IONS hopefully today, if not tomorrow. Once they approve that, then we can implement those changes, and we've got 3 months to do that. So it's a very, very pleasing result, which many other BCAs around the country are quite envious of having such a low number. But it does show a great effort put in by the whole team, and certainly in recent years.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Burt. Sorry, Your Worship, I think I missed you.
You're all good. No, you didn't at all. Josh, just one question, just in regard to consumer information, which was not adequate for, just in regard to resource consents. It said did not explain the impact of resource consent on an application for building consent or when a resource consent may be required. Was that just one example? Because that sort of information the team would probably normally be providing in conversation, wouldn't they? Or is that, yeah?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. It's consumer information, or as we also call it, public information, is quite extensive, and we have quite a lot of it sitting on our website, not only on our page, but on other pages as well within the website. But part of our requirement is to explain how the building consent process works from start to finish. And inclusive of that is what other considerations that need to be made along the way. One of which is, well, should a resource consent be required? How do I know? And who do I go to talk to or contact about that? So it was, again, going back to my comment earlier about the GNC being minor in nature. It's ultimately, these things are just about some words that need to be included in some of that information. And just to provide a little bit more context around what you would need to do. So from my perspective, when you're providing consumer information, I view it in a very specific way. But of course, trying to then step back and read that information from a consumer, that's the challenge. And so that's some of the things that they've picked up on. So as a consumer, some of that stuff could have been, some extra information could have been added just to make it a bit clearer. And so that's really what it was about.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Councillor Booth, did you have a question?
Yeah, look, I was quite, obviously a good report, and it's probably a reflection of having experienced staff and people, competent people doing the job. I guess I know that we've got some reasonably experienced inspectors and at the moment, what's the future for us? Have we got young people? Are we training and bringing more people through while we've got the benefit of those older experienced guys still in the field? I guess
Great
continuity, it's actually really important when it comes to this sort of thing.
It's a very difficult space to recruit fully qualified BCOs in. And as you say, we've got a great experienced team. We are pushing as much as we're able to have a double up and have people training alongside these experienced people. And we have got 2 recent appointments, haven't we, Jason, that are training up, one of whom is actually He's already has his qualification because he comes to us as an engineer. So we have 2 in the works that are building their capacity that have recently joined the team. And we have others in mind. I think Jason's got a few people interested in who are quite young, who are interested in coming off the tools and getting involved in the regulatory side of things. So we're hoping to catch a couple more in the next few months as well. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Jason.
Yeah, I will actually, Paul, if that's okay. Thank you, Councillor Booth. That's a very good question, actually. One of which is being talked about throughout the country in terms of how do we actually future-proof and provide more resilience going forward. So in addition to what Paul's just said, I have got approval to recruit for the replacement of one of our inspectors that are retiring towards the end of the year. And so those applications close at the end of this week. So I've got a couple of good applicants sitting there at the moment. And part of what I've been doing across or in conjunction with Boyne's Building Officials Institute of New Zealand is becoming or developing systems that we can use to train and assess people that are wanting to come into the industry. And there are surprisingly a number of people that are wanting to know how do you go about doing that. And you're probably looking at potentially, well, it's across the board actually, young and not so young. Yeah, we are developing those systems and coming up with plans of how that can be utilised across all BCAs throughout the country. Also developing a mentoring program, which I'm a part of, which is also helping those people that are wanting to make that change from whatever business they're in at the moment and changing their career into the building control sector. So it's an ongoing thing, but something we are working on currently.
Thanks, Jason. Did you have a question, Councillor Wall?
No, that's okay. You just answered.
It's been answered. Any further questions for Paul or Jason? No. So I'm happy to move that we note and receive that report. Thank you, Your Worship. All those in favour? Aye. Thanks very much, Paul. Good work. And Jason, thank you. And I think that brings us very quickly to the end of our meeting. Thank you very much.
Tēnā koutou, good morning and welcome to Infrastructure Committee. Welcome to all those that are on Zoom and here in the chamber. I call for apologies, which I've received none. Any identifications of urgent business? Identifications of matters of a minor nature? Any conflicts of interest? Okay, Chairman's report. Since this is our first infrastructure meeting since November last year, there's a little bit on my report. So during November through to today, I've attended age-friendly presentations to a variety of community groups, the age-friendly steering group meeting, the airport annual management review meeting with Joe Luxton, council workshops, a Zoom meeting with Minister Robinson, the Venture Timaru AGM, People and Performance Committee, Tenders and Procurement Committees, council meetings, our Rangi Stadium Trust Committee, the Women's Wellness Centre walkabout, 3 water Zoom meeting with Phil Driver, meeting with Group Manager Andrew Dixon, and the City Hub Group. I'll move my report. I have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Birch. Very good. We go on to order of business number 6, minutes of the Infrastructure Committee meeting in November. Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly, seconded by Councillor Gilchrist. All those in favour? Carried. Lovely. Okay, so we have 4 reports being presented this morning. The first one is Three Waters information. I'd like to welcome Grant Hall, Drainage and Water Manager, up. So this report 7.1 looks at 4 issues that have been progressed through the water, sewer and stormwater activities. I'll take the report as read, Grant, and I think what we will do is go through each issue individually and then give an opportunity for any questions, and then we'll move on to the next one. Is that fine?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and if it's okay.
Absolutely, Mr. Harper, you may join.
I've got first part of the item, and then the first bit, which is to do with the plan change 7.
Perfect.
So, Madam Chair, Plan Change 7 has been on foot for 5 years, and I have been managing that since its inception. And given I'm still on staff, it's been decided I would see it through to conclusion, which we thought was going to be last December, but then some High Court appeals popped up, and we are still those appeals are still in progress. And as of 2 weeks ago, there was to be a High Court call-over hearing last week, but that was negotiated to be deferred by 3 months because the parties are now negotiating to define the scope and scale of those appeals, and hopefully they will be reduced down in size, and so there's a limited amount of work to be put in front of the High Court. And of course, the court has to decide that those matters are a matter of High Court appeal in any event. And so that's not a given at this stage. And we are joining the party because some of the decisions that were made is what we sought, and therefore we were quite happy that they were included in Plan Change 7, but now they have been appealed against, and therefore we need to join the proceedings. Happy to take questions.
Any questions for Mr. Harper regarding Plan Change 7? Okay, we'll move on to the Timaru Urban Water.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just as a bit of an update in terms of this discoloration, which of course struck us in December, identified as being manganese from the shallow groundwater, the infiltration gallery at the Opahi. As mentioned, groundwater management is primarily the domain of the Regional Council, and so we've been working very closely with the Regional Council. It's been identified as a reasonably localised issue, and so there's been some ongoing monitoring and some work being done in terms of the remediation of that. Operationally, what it's meant is that we have minimised the abstraction from that part of the gallery. That does place us at a little bit of risk in relation to a storm or a heavy rain event, which may then make the raw water from both the Parrior and the Opahi not suitable for treatment. And the part of the gallery that we have isolated with the high manganese is the area that normally gets the better quality first. So that will mean that it's a longer period of time before we're able to take from the Opahi, at which, so we survive on the storage that we have at Claremont. If we have that on a continued basis that we, an example of which we had a couple of years ago, then it may mean that we could be in a situation where we need to take water which isn't suitable for treatment, which may end up resulting in a boil water notice for Timaru, which is not something that we're wanting to do, but just to highlight that risk. As I said, we're working with Environment Canterbury. Some good news is that the Parrior Section 3 pipeline, which was accelerated, has been completed, and we are now using that pipeline. So that work was done really well by the contractor, and they should be congratulated. What that does mean is that lowers the risk of there being an interruption to the Parrior pipeline in terms of having big sections of it that have now been renewed, and it also has lowered the pressure through the gorge, and so there's again a lower risk of there being a disruption of the Parrior pipeline. Happy to take any questions in terms of discoloration.
Councillor Paddington.
Thanks, Grant. Could you expand on what you mean by when you say we're working with ECAN? What exactly are you working on? What's the goal? What's the timeline?
So the goal, as I said, we've done the ECAN have done an extensive catchment monitoring, and we have also installed an additional 6 monitoring bores upstream and in the vicinity of the Opahe Gallery, and identified that it is a localised area issue. It isn't catchment wide, and so we're continuing with that monitoring, and ECAN are looking at, as I said, the remediation of that area to see whether or not we can eliminate the manganese from that area, the cause of the manganese.
We will be getting a formal report from ECAN at some stage.
Yes.
Yeah, on their investigation and the results. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. That'd be handy.
Yes, so we do have regular fortnightly meetings now. It was weekly with ECAN in terms of the progress of that work.
Yeah.
Just kind of
Yeah,
follow up.
you can.
When you say remediation, Grant, what are they hoping to do?
Well, our ultimate aim is to identify the cause of the manganese and to allow us to abstract water from that area that doesn't have high levels of manganese.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think you told me anything, but thanks.
No.
Councillor Booth.
When we initially spoke about this, we were going to pursue on the council's behalf our own independent advice and get to the bottom of the issue separate to ECAN. Has that happened?
So the advice that we've received, which was primarily associated with treatment options in terms of the manganese, we haven't received or sought independent advice in terms of the groundwater quality, the potential cause of the manganese. The ECAN groundwater scientists have been providing us with a really good service in terms of that. So we're working with them in relation to the cause or the possible cause and the remediation.
Yeah,
They've advised us that that they think that if we can get to the bottom of the cause of it, that remediation of the groundwaters in the area should be a matter of weeks or months, not years.
So I guess I was getting to the point of, obviously we need to know where the source is, and I guess that's the most important thing. And you put in extra bores. There was one direction that you had manganese coming. You've already got half a dozen bores around the extraction point. One of them was quite high, where the others were like literally nothing. So have you extrapolated back to try and find in where that is coming from independently of ECAN? Have you done anything yourself?
Yes. So we have installed 6 additional monitoring bores in that vicinity.
Right.
Yes. So on Old River Road Within that area, there, as I say, there have been 6 additional monitoring buoys that we've installed, which we have started to monitor in terms of determining the direction of where the manganese is coming from, which would then indicate or pinpoint the various, or the potential cause of the manganese. It appears to have come from the sediments within the ground, manganese as a natural element, and the conditions have resulted in the manganese dissolving from the sediments into the groundwater, and then our abstraction of that, and then our treatment has brought that dissolved manganese into a solid form and into the reticulation.
Has land use been ruled out, or is that still quite, as in what allowed, what has been allowed to occur in certain areas? Has that been ruled out at all?
No, it hasn't been ruled out.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Parker, can I just note, look, I think obviously it's pretty important that at a point in time we can, go to the public and say, hey, this is the conclusion of the report, because I think they're going to want to know, and obviously we've been put under the bus many times around it, bearing in mind also that we do need it to be factually correct as far as the investigation, that we can't put any probably hearsay before, before that report's concluded. But my expectation from a council point of view is that we do have a report that we can make public as to what the cause of this manganese is at some point in time, and that would be, within the next sort of 4 to 8 weeks, hopefully.
Yes.
And it would be at that point, we're probably, the situation should be fully remedied as well, wouldn't it? Yeah, and that's what you're expecting, Grant, that we're in a position to do that.
Your worship, it is, yes.
Thank you.
So that report will be a collaborative report with ECAN's findings as well?
Yes, well, I'd expect there to be a
Partnership and findings and report?
yes, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, as we said before, ECAN is responsible for the management of the groundwater. So we expect that the investigation and the final report will come from them.
Okay, I'm just going to move to Councillor Walls. Apologies.
Thank you. Just regards, so we're definitely going to get a joint report from ECAN plus TDC. I just want to get that clarified.
We haven't talked to them about a joint report, but we would certainly be expecting all the information, the findings from ECAN, and whether or not that's our report, or but we would certainly incorporate the commentary and all of the information from ECAN.
So part of that there also would be, how are we going as far as the financial implications of this? Is there a shared budget that's taken place at the moment? Where are the full costings falling on, TDC or ECAN?
So,
and what are the ramifications been so far as the budget and all costs involved?
So there's probably been a total of additional cost, and that's in terms of operational and capital, because of the acceleration of probably the better part of $500,000. The other work, the combined work that's been going on, so we installed the 6 additional monitoring buoys, and we have a handheld monitor, and we've been sending samples to the laboratory, which has been at our cost. The regional council, though, have now set up a sampling program from the buoys that we installed, and so they will be monitoring that weekly going forward now.
So that 500,000, is that purely a Timaru District Council cost at this stage?
Yes, it is.
So over and above, do we know what's been spent by ECAN to try and manage it as well as part of the joint process around trying to get to the bottom of this whole water issue?
No, we don't have any, I don't have any idea of their costs. There hasn't been any suggestion of us inquiring in relation to their cost.
Could I request that we do get a report to find out what the costs involved from ECAN as well? So we've got a joint overview and whole financial implications of this issue. Because I think it's relevant. The public interest.
Just to fit, would that not be ECAN's right to disclose that information to the community on their
Okay,
funding?
yes, we can leave it that
This
way. Yeah, we can
would
leave it that
not
way.
be?
But I'm sure there'll be a community interest in this matter.
The chief executive can talk to some of this if you like, Councillor Parker.
That would be lovely.
You're ready for me through you, Madam Chair. Thank you. So, look, yeah, thank you, councillors. There's a number of issues here. I think Grant and his team have been focused on the sort of technical, what's been the cause, the drivers, and then how to resolve it. And that's been their sort of line of work. And they certainly, Grant, you'll be all very pleased to hear, is most careful about his budget. So probably has a very good idea of what he has spent. The sort of recovery and where they fall is a matter that's easier determined once we've seen the report. And we don't really want to predetermine anything from the report. But what they're getting from ECAN really is a lot of the factual material. And I think they'll distill that to then make sure that it's reflected either in a joint report or in our own cover report when it comes back with the ECAN report. And obviously one of the situations that will be addressed, because we do want to be transparent about the costs here, is what are those costs and how have they fallen and where should they then, how are they recovered? So there's a little bit of work that is going on. And it's to give you that update. And I think it's progressing quite well, would be how I would frame it. But it was a bit of a Sherlock Holmes exercise in terms of trying to eliminate everything. And then you're left with, what you're left with is the source or the cause of it. So that, I think, I sort of 4 or 8 weeks of ECAN given any indication when they might conclude their work, Grant? That's,
Yeah, in about that
so,
period.
Yeah, so we're very aware of the interest that this has had right from when it started around Christmas time, Councillor Wills. So I hope that helps a bit in terms of framing the pathway forward, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Bede. Councillor Booth, but Bert, did you just hop out?
Yeah, that's exactly the same process.
Okay, final question to you, Councillor Booth.
Yeah, look, I'm concerned that we actually haven't got our own independent information, because potentially if ECAN have failed in their process and they've allowed something inappropriate to happen, they should be financially liable. It's cost $500,000. Why are we not getting? We've been sued at times by ECAN for doing silly things, the council. So I mean, shouldn't we actually have our own independent report done in case there's a liability issue that has allowed something to occur that has caused this?
Can I, Madam Chair? Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, to your questions, Councillor Booth, and I think you hit on a point that's what you're really talking about. Is there a conflict of interest here between ECAN, I think, doing the investigation when they also have responsibility? And I think we did get some independent advice through this. We've got our own independent experts in-house looking at it, as people like Grant Hall. But some of what ECAN are doing is gathering empirical evidence. And I think it's probably more the conclusions that are drawn from the testing and the empirical evidence that we will want to get an independent assessment and oversight of. So I think all parties are alert to the risk of a conflict of interest potentially existing, but some of it is just water testing and sourcing, and it's really the conclusions. And we have at times engaged our own independent experts to come and have a look and give us advice. So I don't think we're resiling from that. But as Mr. Hall has said, ECAN are, or it might have been Andrew, they are responsible for the groundwater. And so they do need to be given an opportunity to conduct those investigations. So, but we're really alert to that conflict about, the old story, if you're responsible and then you do the investigation, has it coloured your perspective? There's always that risk, and all public authorities should be aware of that, as we are on occasions ourselves.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll look forward to the report in 6 to 8 weeks. Okay, let's move on to item number. Sorry.
I was just saying, apparently the ECAN rep is online, is that right? So, I mean, if
Okay,
there,
so-
if you want to.
So we have, and I will welcome Brian Reeves on Zoom. So he's the South Canterbury Delivery Manager for ECAN. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you.
I'm not sure how long you've been online to be able to hear the conversation we've been having in the chamber.
Yes, I've heard it all.
Oh, great. Any comments?
No, look, I think it's Grant's summation's been very succinct, and as I said, we've been working very, very closely with Grant and his team, and have certainly adopted a no surprises, attitude towards the whole thing.
Great, thank you. I'll open it up for councillors if anyone has any questions or comments for Mr. Reeves. No. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I don't have any questions, but there's quite a bit more in the report that I do have some questions on around fluoridation, I think.
Yeah, we're going to the next one now.
Okay, perfect.
So the next one is fluoridation. So number 3.
Number 3, so I'll again take that as read, and there are some interesting attachments there that hopefully everyone's read. So we have 6 supplies schemes that we provided information on. Obviously, the Director General of Health has the ability to issue a direction to a local authority to fluoridate, and they have asked us to provide the information. It's expected that directions will start to come from the Ministry of Health mid this year. So everyone needs to be prepared for fluoridation. And we have therefore included, we've done a little bit of a cost estimate and come up with an estimated capital cost of about $3 million to fluoridate those 6 supplies. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, Brian.
Question, comment. I think it looks like the cost's going to land fairly on the ratepayers, isn't it? So I think it's probably something we need to join together with our fellow councils, whether it be across Canterbury and across the country, and pushing back early, because if it's 3 million for us, and I think you've noted the operational costs aren't going to be too bad. We can probably wear that, but $3 million worth of capital that we haven't necessarily budgeted for across the country, that's going to be a significant amount of money, isn't it? So we need to push back now and put a hand out if they're this is another great example of central government just throwing a curveball at us. So as far as actions around that, I'd just probably request that the council's comfortable with it. I raised that with the mayoral forum around potentially around pushing back on the capital costs of fluoridation as a starting point.
Thank you, Mayor Brian. I will continue the conversation with Councillor Booth.
It would appear that it's a directive from the central government, so therefore there's going to be no discussion other than an election, perhaps. So what I would assume from what that reading that letter from Ashley Bloomfield, that we just actually have to assume it's going to happen. So we just get on with it and make the arrangements.
It's an interesting approach to take. Should we just get on with 3 waters as well?
Okay.
But our job is to speak out for the community, and the community needs to know that this is coming from central government. It's $3 million worth of cost that is unbudgeted. So should they be paying for it?
Absolutely, and if this is being mandated or implemented by central government, where's the funding behind that to make it happen? Councillor Paddington.
Point 30 grant, Tomato Harawai is being more vigilant in respect to strict compliance. Over all our schemes, do we meet them? The new standards? Because I noticed Timona's had a few boil notices recently. I'm just interested.
So yeah, I was going to come to the drinking water rules
Yeah,
next.
so we'll save that one for our last point, point 4. Okay, councillor Burt.
Yeah, I was just going to say, interesting, councillor Booth, in terms of we've got to get on with it. Well, at some stage they will mandate it, but I think this needs to be intertwined with Three Waters. This is something that we need to get out to the public again as well. This needs to be put in there, that these impositions are being put on to us. They're ongoing, they're accumulating, and the costs to us, not only what we're going to potentially lose through Three Waters around ownership, but to the amount we're talking about, and obviously the public consultation aspect around fluoridation, which is going to be a real deal as well. So we need to, and it's the only way to provide the pressure that we need to deal with this.
I don't believe there's any.
No.
We drive our own consultation by, we need.
But I'd be very comfortable for Mayor Bowen to be discussing this at the Canterbury Mayoral Forum and seeing if we can get some traction collectively. Any more comments, questions on the fluoridation? Okay, let's move on to point 4, which is the drinking water rules.
Yes, so thank you. The drinking water rules, the Tamara Arawai, which came into effect on the 15th of November, and they've set out some draft documents in terms of drinking water standards and assurance rules and aesthetic values, acceptable solutions, and environmental performance measures. The standards are just the standards. They set the levels. The rules are the compliance rules. They're the ones that they're very technical in nature, and so our technical staff are reviewing those. We do have some comments. It's all pretty minor, to be honest, but and very technical. So we're just working through those. That submission closes on the 28th of March, so we're nearly finished looking at that. And of note, so all of the drinking water suppliers that are registered, which is obviously Timaru District Council, have to have a water safety plan which complies with the Water Services Act in place by the 15th of November this year. So 1 year. So we're working on those water safety plans to ensure that we are compliant. And of course, that includes, yes, the treatment plants at Tianawai and Timaru and St. Andrews. That will then get us to compliance with all of their schemes.
So Grant, we already have drinking water safety plans. So is it just a point of tweaking it, or is it quite a big overhaul on the plans that we already have in place?
No, then it's more a matter of tweaking, although there are, I mean, obviously there does need to be a new plan for the Tianawai and Timaru. So there are a number of, actually, to be fair, it's probably more than tweaking. There are a number of additional rules that Tamara are implementing. And so we do have a couple of people that are working with us to rewrite those safety plans. It's not a total rewrite, but it's more than just a tweak.
So is that in-house, or is that consultants coming in?
Both.
And also you've got the timeline of 15th of November.
Yes.
Councillor Burt.
Yeah, so in terms of the new drinking water standards, what is the government doing in terms of pointing or actually mandating full fluorination across the whole of the drinking water standards and for New Zealand?
Yeah, that is definitely part of the standards and the rules, in fact. So I think what you're referring to, Councillor Burt, is chlorination within the reticulation.
Yes.
Which there is, so that basically that will become the norm. There is a potential for exemption, but that is going to be very, very difficult to achieve. And so I would suggest that there will be very few supplies, probably within the country, that will have an exemption to not have chlorine within the reticulation.
I have a supplementary, Madam Chair. Second question.
Yes.
So the other thing is, does it talk about community drinking water protection zones and water takes for stock where some domestic use is taken from those? Does it actually look at that or ring fence it or deal with it in any way, shape or form?
There are drinking water protection plans that are required. So that does, it isn't actually part of the standards or the rules, but it's promoted primarily through environmental standards and policy standards. Just on if I could add another thought on the chlorination.
Okay.
One of the comments that have come from Tamara is that all water supplies must be able to implement emergency or urgent chlorination to the reticulation, quote, at a moment's notice. So if there is an exemption, they still have to have a chlorination system in place, able to be turned on immediately.
So that lies my second question in terms of understanding if we are a supplier through a stock take to for domestic use, is it not contingent on us to have that facility available at that level?
Yes, it is.
Oh.
And there are some acceptable solutions. So for those schemes that may be able to use a point of use or a point of entry system, so they are being developed, those acceptable solutions, primarily for small rural water supply schemes.
And when we think about the fact that there are thousands and thousands of those through New Zealand that we've never really had under the three waters, the cost implications as well embedded in that to councils, and it's another imposition.
So the reticulate, the chlorination wouldn't necessarily apply to the small rural schemes that have an acceptable solution. But yes, there's a significant investment in throughout the country required in terms of water treatment.
Wow, thank you.
Councillor Riley.
Yeah, thanks. Is there any schemes within our thing that we cannot give that chlorination at a moment's notice? Have we got any currently?
Yes. Geraldine.
So that hasn't got instant system there. Okay.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, thank you.
Having said that, there is funding in the long-term plan for the installation of a chlorination system in the Geraldine scheme.
Okay. Councillor Wills.
Thank you. Interesting. I just wanted to get some expansion on, you talked about exemptions, and I was going to raise Geraldine as an example, because as we well know, when we went through the water process here, the community as a whole was very vocal and were very passionate about their water supply. So when we look at the exemptions, will they have an impact on the likes of a community like Geraldine, or are there special circumstances? How else are they going to work around it?
I would suggest that it will be very, very difficult to get an exemption for Geraldine, that they will basically need to be chlorinated. Every case will be taken on its own merits, and there is I've had one webinar with Tamata Arawai, and it was very clear that it was going to be extremely difficult to obtain an exemption. There needs to be a whole host of issues that looked at, in particular, water loss, so leakage within the system, backflow prevention. There's a huge amount of work that would need to be to be done, that would be extremely difficult to meet.
Thank you for that. I'm thinking of my colleague, Councillor Oliver, actually, and some of the challenges that are going to be going ahead for him and his community. So thank you very much for that, Grant. I appreciate that.
Councillor Oliver, I'll give you opportunity to speak if you've got something.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, for having me back there. That's great. Hey, I'm just wondering, Grant, when are we going to start communicating with our community regarding chlorination in our water? We did talk about that at a meeting about 4 months ago. Councillor Wills brought up about having front footing it early. I'm just wondering, when are we going to start communicating that with our community?
Yeah, we'll be starting that very soon. As I said, I have had a webinar with Tamara last week in relation to the exemption process, where it became clear that it was actually going to be extremely difficult. As Mr. Dixon said, we do have funds within the long-term plan to install the equipment, which will carry on as programmed. It will be an issue of when and how that may then be implemented in terms of turning it on. As I said also before, the water safety plan due on the 15th of November, that will also therefore need to include our plans for chlorination to meet the rules within the reticulation by the 15th of November. So we will need to start to discuss this with the community very soon. It is coming quickly.
So an actual comms plan hasn't been developed as yet?
In process.
Just a note, we're not the only ones in this situation, particularly within Canterbury. So Waimakariri and Selwyn are both grappling with this issue, and Christchurch City themselves. So they have pretty much resigned to the fact that they will be chlorinating as well. Yeah.
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair. So by November, we would need to be able to have that in place as far as Geraldine goes. Is that correct? Or
I think that is correct.
your interpretation?
It isn't 100% certain, but that's my interpretation of the rules.
And so do we have the ability to do that, to be in that position? Because it's with the constraints of supply and whatever else. I don't know how easy it is to, yeah. Because I think it's key that in the position that we are, that we meet the drinking water standards. So we need to be in the position that we can chlorinate if we have to.
There are some issues that we do have on site in terms of space, but we're certainly intending to have something and have it in place in time. Absolutely.
Meet that deadline, yeah.
Councillor Oliver, do you have a second question or any other comment?
No, not at this stage. I think all the questions have been answered that I was thinking about.
Thank you. Councillor Wills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Grant, I don't want to be harping along this line, but the financial implications of this here, have we looked at that? And it is within budget?
Yes.
And it's expected to stay within that, or
Yes.
is it going to be blowouts?
No.
No. And I ask that for a reason, because I'm just seeing everything, well, this whole water issue is becoming a major thing for us, isn't it? So,
it's a big list.
okay, if you're comfortable, I'll be comfortable, hopefully.
I'm comfortable.
Okay, Councillor Booth.
Is there shared infrastructure for the fluoridisation and the chlorinization? So is that all the same gear?
No.
Okay, so if there's no further questions, we'll go back to the recommendation that this report is received and noted. I'm happy to move that. Councillor second, all those in favour? Aye.
Sorry, just one closing question, because I think it's important. So, and it does go back to the microfiltration of our own water supply. And I know there's sort of prelim planning going on, what size capacity, that sort of thing. But I mean, that really is the largest risk still for our supply, isn't it? That turbidity of source water, as far as, yeah, that's correct.
Yes, that's correct.
I think it's just important that it's highlighted that that is our biggest risk. It's not manganese in the water, because we'll work through this, we'll get a solution, and that is in the long-term plan in the first handful of years, and we will we just need to move forward on that project once you get to a point where you can come to us with recommendations.
Thank you, Grant. Councillor Walsh, can you just turn your mic on so I can see who you are? So you're Gavin Oliver today. Okay. No, that's right. Lovely. All right, let's move on to 7.2, which is Waka Katohi Judicial Review. I welcome Susie. Thank you for this report. This report is regarding an invitation to join Waka Katahi in the High Court review. So I'll take the report as read and let Susie speak to. Andrew's going to take the lead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Waka Kotahi have been challenged in regard to the development of the National Land Transport Program by a transport advocacy group called Movement. The challenge relates around that they do not believe that Kotahi actually took into account emissions and regard to climate change in particular. So not enough emphasis was put on there. So they are seeking a judicial review of the development of that National Land Transport Program. Now, we of course draw funding from that program, and so by that means we are considered an affected party by the court, and the court has directed Waka Kotahi to actually approach us and invite us to join the proceedings. It is an invitation only at this stage. They have approached us, and this report is to consider that. Now, the impact, the worst case scenario of the judicial review would be they would have to redo the National Land Transport Program. There's limited scope to actually change things, because the government actually sets the buckets, so to speak, of how much funding can be allocated to each particular activity. And things like public transport, which is contribute to climate change and reducing emissions, is funded at the moment at the maximum level that the government allows. So effectively that won't change. So the impact on this for us is extremely minor. And as far as I'm aware, no other councils actually joined the proceedings. I think that Waka Kotahi can actually front up to this and defend it themselves. They are very confident of success anyway. But it's important that we give you as a council the choice, and that is the purpose of this report.
Thank you, Andrew. Interesting report, interesting invitation. I'll go over to Councillor Burt.
Yeah, I think the report is self-explanatory, and it does have implications for us with work that we've tendered and in process for costing and things. It's interesting that the latest amount that the government are going to take off the cost of fuel is going to directly impact their levels of service, and that will be directly around Waka Kotahi. So that's what we've got in the future. So I'll move that report.
Lovely. So that's an invitation to decline. Lovely. Any other conversation regarding this matter? Thank you, Barbara. Councillor Gilchrist will second it. All those in favour say aye. It's carried. Thank you. All right, moving on to report 7.3, the road efficiency group quality report results. So an overall improvement from last year, which is great for you and your teams, and the valuable data collection that we've got. I'd ask you to speak to your report and share with us your successes, but I'm also anticipating councils would like to hear some comments on the activities that we were unable to meet. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that, Madam Chair. So this is undertaken every year and at the end of every financial year. So keeping in mind that at the end of this last financial year, we were dealing with a not insignificant reinstatement of a rather massive flood in the area. So most of the team was pretty dedicated to that. However, they still managed to pull a pretty good result out of the bag to get this across the line and get all of the data sorted for this work. So highlights, I suppose, are that yes, we still sit within the top 10 within the country. We invest about the right amount into our data capture and storage. And to get to those final 10 points could be quite cost prohibitive. And yeah, so it's yeah, a really good result with the key components being met really well around that road safety and the investment in the areas that are important to Timaru district. Yeah, so the overall results yeah, are very good. And when you compare us to the attachment, the first page of the attachment, you'll see there that obviously an improvement on last year, and generally speaking, considerably better than the national average. So, you know, I'll basically take any questions on any shortfalls or.
Thank you, Susie. The streetlight replacement, is that because we now have LEDs, we don't need to replace them?
Correct.
So that's like an unfair.
Yeah, there's a few of the unfair ones. And you'll note that some of the ranges are also quite tight as well.
Yeah.
So the scale, yeah, you can be out by one record, like there's one there about asphalt. I think that was a very short section of asphalt that we missed because we were dealing with the flood, which of course now has been entered and is sitting there. Yeah, so.
Thank you. Any questions for Susie? Comments?
Oh, just if I could highlight there, also the ONRC category aligns with the traffic data. The reason that is not aligned is purposeful, and the fact that when we first did the ONRC, so that's the one network road classification, we actually looked at not only the vehicle count that that roads took, but also the function that they played in the network. So there, you know, we did upgrade a few and downgrade a few depending on the function that played in the network. Yeah, so that will also hopefully be well resolved through the changes to this report that will link to the one network framework, which brings the form and the function of the road as opposed to just traffic count.
Wonderful. Okay. Oh, Councillor Booth.
Thank you. Just looking at the timeliness is just what was the only thing that really stuck out, major issues. And was that to do with flooding as well?
Yeah, flooding, and the team member that does most of the data collection is also does the capital works program. So it kind of gets to the capital works program gets completed, you know, around March, April, and then all of the data gets centered. So we don't necessarily get the data, you know, if we're doing a, what's an example? So before Christmas, obviously we completed a pavement rehabilitation up on Winchester Hanging Rock Road. We won't necessarily enter that data in, then and there we'll, you know, batch the work up. So you've got a worthy amount of work to put in. So they're all in within the year, apart from the one asphalt record. But yeah, it's just a case of we kind of try and batch it so it's an efficient use of the staff time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lovely. Would you like to move this report, Councillor Booth?
Sure.
Thank you. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Burt. All those in favour? Aye. Carried. Thank you. Okay, so our final report, 7.4, Road to Zero. This report looks at the New Zealand's Road to Zero strategy, and quite a moving ad that they have on TV at the moment. Susie, I'll let you speak to the report.
Yeah, the ads are certainly, yeah, they are challenging, you know, you challenge that driver behaviour aspect, and also explaining, I don't know if you've seen the second ad, explaining the whole system approach where it's like how many clowns can we get out of the car. You know, you've got you've got the people making sure they're selling the right tyres, you've got the WAF checks, you've got the star rating, you've got the guys kicking the guardrail, you've got the pedestrians, you've got the mechanics. So it's quite cool actually explaining that it's a whole system. You've got the police there monitoring the speed, and I suppose that's what this report does. It's working through explaining the whole system, and also covering off their, you know, that a lot of the public perception around road safety as well. And so if you do have some time, that Kantar report is well worth reading. It aligns pretty closely to our local findings with our local road user surveys. But I suppose the key is that, you know, Timaru has always aligned with the road safety strategies of the time. And that we have recently refreshed our road safety action plan, which is a wider plan, which includes both the Mackenzie, Waimiri and Timaru District Councils, also have Ashburton sitting on in, and Wakakotahi Highways, police, FENS, yeah, we're ACC, so we're always looking at opportunities on what we can do better there. I suppose the key is that it's, you know, road to zero, so it's a really strong target to get to no deaths and serious injuries on our network by 2050. The first step is 40% reduction in DSI over the next, what have we got left, 8 years by 2030. So for Timaru, this year, we're obviously not looking too great on that with our current crash statistics. However, we have got, you'll see there that there's conversation, what's the interesting stats? You know, like 4 in 5 New Zealanders, 79% consider our roads to be fairly safe to travel, and which is on a similar level to previous years, and that 1 in 4 drivers experience fatigue driving long distances over the last year. So, you know, all pretty similar to things that we do find in Timaru. And I suppose that the really interesting part is that unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm not sure how we look at it, if you go down to the last point 24 there around our funding, so our 3-year requested funding allocation. So historically, previously in LTP, we had 15 million funded, and this what was called then low cost, low risk, which was all around those intersection improvements, seal widenings, changes to median islands, safer crossing points, those kind of things. Unfortunately, it's now stacked up it's been split into local road improvements and a road to zero category. The road to zero category utilises I wouldn't say a black box, but it uses a formula that compares DSIs nationally and then comes out with a figure that means that you can spend this level on those type of improvements. And you'll see there that unfortunately for us that means we have dropped. So I suppose, yes, we won't be spending as much as we have in the previous 3 years, but that also probably shows that we haven't got as much of a problem as some of the other areas. However, the opportunities really for us are the extra funding that we received through the NLTP in the road safety education area, and which, you know, council supported through the long-term plan, extra FTE following approval of that funding. So we're working on that with the other 2 councils, Mackenzie and Waimeri. And also the big conversation that we'll be having following the speed limit rule change, we'll be discussing our speed limits, and that will be, you know, a network-wide discussion that will be had with our entire community. Positively though, I was out on site with had an impromptu community meeting yesterday in Taiko with a number of the community members, and it was heartening to see that there was a bit of a push from that area, which is, you know, 100k, but you know, bends and steep blind spots, and they were all really pushing for some lower speed limits. So that was really heartening to see. But that's basically where our drive will be. I'm not sure Andrew might have some more to add to that.
No, I think you covered it very well there. Yeah, we'll have to focus on speed. There's no doubt about that. And I guess our capital improvements, you know, we've done some roundabouts, the Geraldine Winchester roundabout being the flagship last year, and we will be restricted on what we can do in that space from now on because we just don't have the funding for that. So it will be, tackling the softer type measures, the education and the speed limit side of things.
Thank you. Councillor Riley. Oh, sorry, Mayor.
Oh, no, sorry. Councillor Riley's first. I just might jump up a little. Yeah, so
Parrior. Yeah. Thank you for what. It's a frustration about the speed limits, though, isn't it? You know, it's been going on for so long. We as a local body have had that opportunity to change it. It's been going for 3-4 years. I know we've got issues in our part of the woods that we wanted to change. So, you know, it's just it keeps getting pushed out. It seems to be such a, I know it's not a minor thing, but why is it
sitting with the Minister of Transport?
Yeah, but it sort of has been sitting with the minister. There's no criticism of you guys. It's just been sitting with the minister for a hell of a long time.
I suppose they were quite surprised on the amount of feedback that was received following the submission process. So the original timeframe was December 2021, but then due to the amount of feedback that was given, they did make a few rule changes. So it has. The date we were given was March 2022. We haven't been given formally a new date yet. We believe it could be May, but realistically, if it pushes out further than that, then we may look to do a bylaw review for smaller problematic areas as opposed to the wider conversation. But it would be good to just have the wider conversation. I know Waimakariri recently, well, not recently, last year undertook their one. and 60% got across the line. Unfortunately, the others didn't due to a loud minority. And it resulted was, they just some really good campaign around, it's my community, but your commute. So everyone wants to be slow in their community, but get everywhere they want to go fast. So it's that whole, it's that whole mentality shift that's required. And that's the mentality shift that is required for the whole Road to Zero program, is that, our roads need to be forgiving. We need lower speed and drivers to, myself included, to understand that we do easily get distracted and we're only human.
You can have follow-up.
Just an observation. The Road to Zero one, perhaps with the price of fuel and different things, by 2050, we might just, riding horses and riding bikes or something by then.
Thanks. So the speed limit review is a bit of a priority, really, and we have been, twiddling our thumbs, waiting on Wellington again, funny enough. So when do you think a date, because some of these communities are asking, and when do you think a realistic date, whether we do a bylaw review or whether we have to wait, what's something we can go back to our community and say, hey, we can get these down by?
I think realistically we should make the call in July, whether if it's pushed again, we should look to instigate a bylaw review. The team are busy at the moment pulling together the information through out of context curves, mega maps, and just the feedback that we get from the community to pull together a ideal solution. So we are doing, I suppose, the background work at the moment. So when we do eventually either do a bylaw review or manage to do a speed management plan through the rule change, the information will be there, so we're ready to go. Yeah. So I think the call. I think we should make the call in that July. If it gets pushed out again till December 2022, we should just do a bylaw review.
Yeah, we can't wait much longer. To be honest. We've been very patient. We just keep getting led on all the time. But yeah, there is a point where we're just going to have to bite the bullet, do it. Yeah.
Well, there's a bit of irony when they're, publicising Road to Zero, but we can't adjust speed limits. And on that note, less funding, but and less deaths. Rock on, central government. Thanks for all your support. Just hopeless, isn't it? Sorry, that was certainly a comment, not a question.
Thank you. Councillor Booth.
So what sort of percentage of accidents are occurring or death related on our country roads against, say, state highways?
It's still quite high. I couldn't give you the percentage off the top of my head, but I could definitely get back to you with that information. One of the interesting things that was in the Kantar survey was that only 30, still a lot, but 30% of crashes across the nation, so that's highway and local roads, are due to that. Not poor, not what I'm trying to say, the antisocial driver behaviour. So, excessive speeding, alcohol, that type of thing. And the others, around 70% of crashes are actually just humans making mistakes. So while it will always be a struggle to get that last 30%, there's still a huge amount of impact that we can make by, getting the human factor not out of it, but improving the experience they can have through safer speed limits, through eventual improvements on the road network.
Yeah, the idea is here when they do make a mistake, it's not a fatal one.
I suppose that's, and then while we working on speed limits and also working on our road safety education, part of the wider road safety education is we're using our bylaw staff to actually educate. So handing out pamphlets to people with big rocks on the road reserved for their mailbox, or farm implements sitting there as a pretty garden entrance, and explaining that yes, we know there's lots of hazards on the network, but we've got to start somewhere, and your property has been identified as one that has got an issue. And it's actually, we get a little bit of a bite back on it, but we do eventually see some change through there, and it's about making those roadsides safer. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Susie. Thank you, Andrew. I'm happy to move the recommendation. Oh, sorry.
Oh, excuse me. Can I just ask you a question?
Absolutely. Sorry, Gavin.
Oh, look, Susie and Andrew, I just see that the last campaign never achieved its objectives it was set out to. How confident are you guys that Road to Zero will achieve the objectives it's set out to, full knowing already that we aren't getting the funding that we are actually looking for?
I think the change on, well, from my reading into it, the change on the, the road to zero is that, the work I've done to understand that the drivers at the community don't understand what a road to zero look like, what part they can play in that reduction. And I think that's the difference that we're going to start see coming through, is that real push for better driver education. They're looking at the whole fine system as well. So it's not just packaged into speed and infrastructure. They are looking at the wider enforcement angle as well. So it's quite a big review. And I think that will start to push those 60% of drivers to better choices, better driving behaviour.
Yeah, I think you've also got technology in the background, particularly with regard to safer vehicles. And that will start to come through, as we have lane corrections and things like that in vehicles these days, and it's becoming more and more common. So there will be gains in that respect.
Can I just ask another quick question? Do you have a rough idea how much it's costing? Road to zero?
Road to zero, they've doubled. I have got it in the report. Oh, I would like to say it was 2 billion. I need to check that. And the wider large report, sorry. Can I get back to you on that one?
Yeah, no worries. I just often think that sometimes we spend all this money where that sort of money was actually spent on the roads, it would actually make them safer in the long run for many years to come anyway, but reports are reports, aren't they?
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Just a quick question, Susie. So it was first launched in Sweden back in 1997, and so it's obviously been a successful program in Sweden, and it's been adopted by other countries. Do you have any idea how successful this program has been?
Yeah, so funnily enough, yeah, obviously they talk about Sweden as an example, and one of my very dear friends is over there, and I often hit her up about what's different over there compared to driving in New Zealand. And one of the key factors for Sweden is that if it doesn't have centerline separation, so a wire barrier or similar, then that road is not a 100k road. It sits at a 60 to 80k road, depending on the geography and topography of that road. So it's quite different. And yes, their restricted learner driver process is much harsher, and so much so that it effectively pushes the younger drivers into more public transport. They can drive like low CC vehicles, a bit like the motorcycle licensing over here, and only drive at a maximum of 50 k's per hour. So you don't have those deaths of the younger kids. Their fines and demerit point system is much more expensive, and also to ensure safe and replacement of both, I suppose, for emissions and for safety. If you want to buy an old, faster boy racer, I hate to say, but with that type of car, the tax that you'll be paying on that annually is considerably higher. So that's they've attacked it from all angles, and compulsory insurance. So that's the key, is they've gone at it from multiple angles. And I suppose this is the first step, and then we hope to see those changes across New Zealand over the coming years.
I think it should be acknowledged that New Zealand, as far as fatalities per 100,000 population, I think we're second in the world behind the United States.
Wow.
So we're extremely high.
Lovely. Councillor Burt.
So by extension to that, the question would be, so they've got we're following in their footsteps around a road to zero. Did they achieve road to zero, or is it, did they get close to it? It's a massive aspiration, which is impossible to actually get to. What did they drive it down to? Is there any figures that are available in relation to that?
Yeah, they certainly have got lower. Again, sorry, I haven't got that right in front of me in this report.
Road to 20.6%.
There has been significant reductions in the number of deaths and serious injuries on their roads over this program's time. I think they've at least halved it. It's significant.
Right.
Yeah, it's an aspirational target, zero. It's a bit like zero waste.
Yes.
Yeah, we still have that zero carbon emissions. Yeah, these things, but it's where we should be looking at. Is the message.
Very good. Thank you.
And just to point on that example, it's it's a compromise, and they have a great system. They have a great public system because they are one of the highest tax countries in the world. Simple as that. If you want it, you need to pay for it.
Okay, so I'm happy to move the recommendation that we receive and note this report 7.4. Councillor Walls will second it. All those in favour? Aye. Against?
Aye.
Okay, so that will now move us into public excluded because we've got no matters of urgent or minor nature. So yes, we do. We'll stick to the rules. Thank you, Councillor Burt. So will you move us into public excluded? Thank you, Councillor Gilchrist.
Okay, thank you. Okay, welcome to Community Services. I have no apologies, so we'll move on from that. Identification of urgent business. Any items that require a motion? None. Thank you. Minor nature. Something that needs a discussion. No, okay, thank you kindly. Now, items of a declaration of conflict of interest. Anybody feel conflicted in any way with anything on the agenda? No, okay. Chairman's report. I'll lash into my long report, Your Worship. I've attended various meetings and had meetings with Eric Barnes. That is my report. I'll move my report. Seconded, Barb. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. Highlight, Barb, isn't it? Confirmation of minutes on page 6, Councillor Burt. Gilchrist, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Great. Now we move on to the reports. There's 4 of them, the annual reports, and on page 11. So Eric's coming forward. I get to page 11. And Eric, so that you have a way forward for the reports, Eric, that you will share with us.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, look, first off, I'll just take all the reports as read. We've got a series of annual activity reports. Each of the unit managers will come up and deliver their own report, but just as a general overall view of this, I just wanted to say a few words. One, look, it's been great to be working with this team in an acting GM role. I can really confirm to yourselves the amount of passion and commitment this team has. And it's really been exciting to work with them over the past couple of months. This has been a significantly challenging year. I don't think anyone has seen it any other way. The team, in dealing with the challenges that have been presented to them, just in a normal sense of operation, is always a difficult situation, i.e. like finding lifeguards at an annual period, sticking in different aspects of dealing with COVID, the lockdown, the changes in direction and regulations have added different dynamics. Really, the team has found unique ways to deal with these challenges. They're having to change week by week sometimes. We come up with different plans, we have different ideas of how to manage services, and then we have to change next week as well. And I think they've actually really taken it to heart and really looked outside the box and then challenged themselves and their own teams in how to deal with this. And I think each of them will talk about different aspects of how they've really come up with different opportunities, whether it's looking at social media aspects of delivering services to those community members who couldn't come into the facilities, but we still want to provide that opportunity for individuals to still engage with us in different ways. So in each of them, we'll talk about those different aspects. But with that, I'm going to hand over to Adele to talk about the library. So thank you.
And thank you for basically giving me my report. Because I was going to say exactly the same things. But first of all, I think I'd like to acknowledge the continued passion of the staff throughout the last year with the whole philosophy of connecting with our communities. The team has embraced challenges and turned them into opportunities, and you'll see that in the report. Business as usual is business as usual, regardless of what we face. One of the big aspects is bridging the digital divide. For a lot of our community, the removal of the checkbooks and online banking was a huge thing for them. So we spent a lot of time going around the communities and offering training on that. We've also now just opened up digital device help in Pleasant Point, and we will be looking at other communities as well. Bax passes, all of a sudden, huge issue. And there was over 4,000 people who came in and had individual one-on-one help with those. So it was a huge thing for our community that they could go somewhere safe and get that help. Thinking outside the box, well, we always try to be inclusive. So once again, COVID threw up some more challenges. We had Books for You, where we would select books or people would ask for books and we'd put them out the back door for them to collect. We had virtual story times and we'd do bulk loans to homeschoolers and other groups, rest homes, etc., to try and bridge that. Very much by the community for the community. One of the huge success stories this year is our Guinness World Record attempt for the knitting, which has been overwhelming in support. Our target was 70,000 squares, and I think we're up to 87,000 now. So we're busy sewing all the blankets together and taking that next step. Breaking down barriers and working with partnerships has been huge. Sensory kits to help people with dementia. Assistive technology, which helps children with dyslexia, Erlands and English as a second language. So they now have C-pens, which means they could go into an exam hall, the same as every other student in their class, and they listen and they can actually read the text of the questions, which is huge from there. And humanware, which caters for the people with low vision. So we're certainly moving into other groups in the community where we can help. Also breaking down the barrier was becoming fine free, which has brought people back to the library, removing one more barrier and making us more inclusive. So there's a quick summary. Any thoughts, questions?
Thank you, Adele. That's really great. Councillor Wells.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Adele, just on page 20.
Sorry, Gavin, I didn't look at the monitor. Apologise.
Yeah, no,
carry on.
I'm just playing Gavin's at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so just in regards to page 20, first of all, amazing work you do. I know and understand the complications you've had throughout the COVID time. Moving on to the part 1, 2, 3, third paragraph down, just in regards to commentary around the MSD, a lot of the work that you, I suppose, that have come over from MSD, that's almost fallen on your staff to support a lot of the people coming using our services within TDC. Has there been any support from MSD, and is there recognition about the work you are doing, and how difficult are your staff finding that? Because that is an area of expertise, isn't it? That some of that information they're trying to share with the clients coming through your doors.
We had no support whatsoever. So we've picked up that workload again, and that's fine. It's got to the point now that even the retail shops, when they sell tablets, phones, whatever, they go to the library, they'll set it up for you.
Wow. Okay.
So we've taken a lot of that workload. Where we have had help in the last year and a half is through the National Library Partnership Program.
Right.
But that comes to an end of the 30th June. We've certainly taken advantage of what was available up until the end.
So to offer some sort of support for yourself and the staff that operate within the library, is there an opportunity maybe, and by yourself, to have some discussions at a senior management level to talk to some of the MSD representatives to go, hey, how can we make this better, both for support and education, but also primarily around filling those gaps that need around expert knowledge. Because is there any liability that will come back onto our staff if you don't share the right information? I'm very conscious of that, but also to the pressure that it's putting on the current limitations available with staff that are sitting within our library at the moment as well.
Okay, the staff do not handle anything that regards privacy issues. So they manually have to enter anything themselves. So sales, online banking, we'd steer clear of any banking details, things like that, but just given the tools to be able to do it. A lot of it is just downloading forms and helping people fill them in, because they're online forms now for a CV, for employment, immigration, things like that. But anything of a personal nature, we walk away from.
So with the likes of JPs, they're still coming and doing their work, correct? I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity for the MSD office to have representatives to come in a similar role, to sit there that when they need that expert support and knowledge around it. I'm just sort of trying to help support the staff within the library. So just as an idea, suggestion.
It's a lovely idea. That's some responsibilities hard because it's random when people come in.
Right, okay.
They want on the spot help.
Okay, I'll leave that one for you, Eric. I think a bit of a challenge there, but just, again, just trying to look outside and thinking, how else can we support our particular staff
Okay,
members?
one of the positions we had, one of the focus areas within the National Library was digital services. So we are applying for an extension, a fixed term extension of 1 year. So that helps bridge that gap.
Through you, Chair. I think you actually highlighted one of the key points. And, I think Adele is doing this really well, where actually libraries and the services we provide to the community are significantly changing. You know, what we perceived as library and the services 10, 20 years ago is absolutely different than what it is today. And we are looking at what does that look like in the future? You know, and it's changing quickly. And what Adele is seeing is more and more people asking for different things and more challenges. And so we are starting to look at that broader aspect. And I think she's doing a really good job in pulling some of these ideas forward. So take that point on board and we will look at that further.
I'm just very conscious. I don't see staff burn out because all of a sudden they become relationship counsellors, financial advisors, work brokers, a whole range of different things. So I'm very, very conscious of that can actually impact on staff, fronting the organisation.
Sally.
Yes, Chair. Thank you, Dale. Absolutely love reading your report. The sensory kits and the interactive programs that you've been doing, just amazing. And I know that, you know, through our age-friendly strategy, and then Alzheimer's is looking at doing a dementia-friendly strategy around the CBD and promoting businesses to be dementia-friendly, that, you know, we will interconnect once again, which will be great. Regarding the funding that you received through the New Zealand Library, and you just said you're going to try to extend one. So is there any other opportunities to extend?
National Library is discussing this week or next if there's going to be any assistance moving forward. The likelihood of staffing is next to nothing, but we'll see. But we're looking at extending or asking for a fixed term extension of these positions and long term, putting them in the long term plan.
Great, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Adele, you know, thanks, and I'll probably obviously congratulate the Temuka, you know, on behalf of the Temuka residents for the you know, you talk about a library, it is a community centre, and I know our community are confident and feel safe when they go down there. So you know, that's all praise to you and your staff and for Sally down there. And I just give an example of how much they are wanting to buy in. We are looking at within Timaru, we've lost our local paper. So I just sort of sowed the seed with Sally about maybe we could worked something through the library and just threw it out there, and she came back with all sorts of great ideas, and we have got someone, not through the library, but it has come out of our community to say he's going to do it. But her and a couple of her staff sort of went out of their way to make, and came to our board meeting to see if we could initiate and get this local paper going. So there's an example of how they do. It does work. It's not just the library. It is their whole community. And I, wish to congratulate them and thank you for your guidance too. Thank you.
Your worship. Kia ora, thanks. Thanks, Zell. We all get pretty excited with the new innovations, etc., that you bring to the district, and often, the first across the country as well. It's pretty cool. I've got to admit, I thought really long and hard, but I never did any knitting. So I apologise for that. But just a follow-up from Councillor Wills's point, I think we just have to tread with caution. I mean, MSD is a closed shop for a reason around security, and you deal with some interesting characters probably on a daily basis, and so we've just got to be really conscious of the staff inside, particular libraries, but also across our facilities with what we do offer into the future. So just have to tread carefully, I think, in that space. And that's my comment. Thanks.
Thank you, Worship. No further comments? Well, look, Adele. Oh, sorry. Oh, Gavin, looking around, didn't look up there. Righto, go. Lodstein.
You're on mute,
Sound,
Gav.
Got a bit of sound, Gavin.
That's better. I just want to, like Paddy, congratulate the staff down at our library and community centre. They've gone above and beyond their call of duty over the last 4 months. I was down there early when the council mandate first came in regarding libraries, and they were busy down there laminating vaccination certificates for all our older community and stuff like that. And the day I was there was a lady there wanting a JP. Her house had burnt down a couple of weeks earlier, and she was desperate to get a JP, and there wasn't one available on Saturday because the person couldn't come in. And they went above and beyond to make sure that a JP was there as soon as possible, and were doing several ring-arounds to try and find a JP to get that lady sorted with what she required. So I'd just like to say, amazing job. Probably not recognised like they should, and they do a great job for the community in Jordan.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Look, Adele, thank you, really for the things that you do with your team. It is a credit to you, and you're an important part of our community, and it is, as you can tell, greatly appreciated. So thank you very much for that. What I'm now looking for is somebody to move that we receive and note this report. Councillor Wills and Councillor Parker. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Now, if we go to the Recreation Facilities Annual Activity Report on page 31, and welcome Craig with Eric.
Thank you, Councillor. I know you'll read through the report. There's just one slight error on the third page of Seabay Fitness. The third sentence says members dropped in total and they came back to over 100. That should have been 1100. Just a one that's dropped out that we all missed. So we do have over 1100 members, not 100.
Right. Great.
Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. Right. Yeah, look, it's been an interesting year, as you've already heard. It's business as usual. It's just that our usual was quite different. Certainly with the numbers that we had allowed into the complex under various rules, and then obviously at the end of the year, the vaccination mandates. So I'm incredibly proud of my team and how they've coped. We've even ongoing to today, we've had obviously some significant staffing shortages across the facilities, and yet we've still managed to deliver in the most part with very few closures of pools than what we would than what we usually plan. And those of you I've met and discussed with individually, you know how much I hate closing pools, but occasionally we have to do it. It's sort of the the thing that you hate to do as a recreation manager, but by the same token, we need to look after our staff. So our overall numbers were down about 15 or 20% over the year, which we were closed for 10% of the time anyway, with full closures and then restrictions the rest of the time. So I'm pretty happy that we're tracking fairly normally towards what we would do, and hopefully this year we'll return a little bit more to usual, and we'll see a tracking back to our normal sort of numbers. But I think the report's fairly self-explanatory. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Craig. It's been challenging times for you with staffing, I know, and I appreciate the journey you've been on, and I think you got us there in a good way. So thank you for that. Is there any other comments from the committee? Gee, you've bowled them out, Craig. Huh? Pretty good, pretty good. Well, I'll look for a receive and note from Barb and from Councillor Gilchrist and Councillor O'Reilly. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against?
Sorry, apologies, Richard. Just conscious that I think the shutdown we moved around last year, is the shutdown just back to the normal time this year, as far as the traditional yearly shutdown that you do?
Yes, this Sunday, the third Sunday in March is the shutdown. We had the ability that I could keep pools open longer if necessary. I simply don't have the staff to do that. But on the plus side, all of the schools that were booked in for next week for the 25-metre pool have all cancelled. So we have no need to keep the 50-metre pool open.
Yeah, sorry, talk in regard to the main maintenance, the yearly maintenance shutdown.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so we completed our shutdown in July ahead of October. So we didn't shut down in October. This year's our 10th year. So we're looking at a 2-week shutdown. The 2 weeks immediately after the October holidays, we've got a compressor to replace and a couple of other things which take a bit longer than our normal 5 to 7 day. But yeah, we'll plan to do that again. And also the other thing I should have mentioned is our 10th year anniversary this year. So that last weekend in July, first weekend in August, we've just started planning to have some sort of a big special day, or probably something to do with the number 10, $10 for family entry or something, and everybody can come along and we'll have all the inflatables out and hydroslide going, and hopefully we'll be able to have more than 100 people in the complex.
A councillor versus staff, a bomb competition. Councillor O'Reilly.
Maybe the councillor with his top of his head photo along one of the Herald signs could do a bomb.
Yes, he could.
Manu competition. Councillor Bowen, Mayor Bowen's team versus the rest.
Fair enough. Oh, thank you, Barb. Yeah, thank you indeed. Thank you. Okay, well, Craig, thank you for your report. There's nobody lined up there, and thank you for the good work you're doing again. And yeah, great. Yeah, good. So now we'll move on to the South Canterbury Museum Annual Activity Report on page 38, and welcome forward, Philip. Welcome, Philip. A good report, as we would expect from you, sir. And if you wish to speak to it in any way you wish at all. Yeah, go for it.
Well, I hope you've all read it. Thank you very much. The summary of 2021 would be it was a better year than 2020. But it could have been better still. From the museum team point of view, we were able to continue working on most of the projects and functions that we would normally work in a non-COVID year. So exhibitions, collection management, education programs, public programs. There was some impact, and that was reflected in user numbers. To a degree, we were down against our 3-year target figure, but certainly up on 2020, which had a longer COVID shutdown period. I guess the thing that I took away from thinking about last year was that our museum team have become a bit more adept and resilient at dealing with the unknown interruptions that will occur because of COVID. It has impacted a little bit on our team in that we, after the last shutdown in August, September, we have not had volunteers coming back in. We've restricted the number of people working in any one space. And currently the museum team are working in split shifts. I should be at home working today, but of course I'm here. But we alternate to make sure that if one part of the team, wider team, is taken down by COVID or home isolations, then we're able to function. That is impacting our ability to get on with a lot of things. But having said that, some of the highlights from last year, we had 5 exhibitions. 3 of them were community partnership exhibitions. South Canterbury Kindergartens, RSA Heritage Collection, and Tennis South Canterbury. So to me, the value here is that the museum isn't just displaying the old stuff, we're also engaging with and facilitating community celebration of heritage, and doing so, getting a wider range of people using the museum, but we're also going outside of the museum, not just with our education programs, but also with our community events and just reach generally. The education aspect is still as strong as ever. However, there has been a complete reduction in the number of schools who are willing to come into the museum, and that was happening from term 3 last year onwards, because we have a focus on also delivering programs in the wider community at natural and historical heritage sites. We've been able to maintain that, and also with Ministry of Education blessing, been able to take some programs to the schools, which hasn't always been something we were encouraged to do in the past. We've also been making more use of digital communications to engage with students where we can, or produce material that can be used in the classroom. So it's, as I say, this report in many ways is similar to those we've delivered before, but with the impact of COVID notwithstanding. The other aspect of our work which is changing is a forward focus as we begin in alignment with the building project that's happening with the Heritage Hub. We are now looking very carefully at how we will operate within that space, both within that space and also with the existing building being redeveloped as a collection heritage centre. So it seems like no year is ever the same. There's always something new, despite the impact of COVID, but also with our work programs. And I think I'd be fair to say the team are in good heart, and as I say, are resilient and learning to be more adept at how we move forward. And we're looking forward to the lessening of restrictions in order to be able to bring our volunteers back in, but also get wider community engagement, involvement, and who knows what we'll be doing this time next year. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Philip. Questions for Philip? Sorry, Stu. Oh, yeah, Stu, Councillor Whittington. Yeah.
It's not a question, Philip, it's more a congratulations. I know Tennis South Canterbury were rapt to be invited to the museum for their centennial. They didn't have the space or the ability, and your team delivered something special. So I congratulate you and say keep going on those community-based ones, because yeah, it was very well thought of in the tennis community.
Great, thank you. Good to know.
Further comments? Look, I'll just commend you too, Philip, on the things that you do and have done over a long period of time, and the work you're doing down the way at the Theatre Royal and all those good things that you're involved in. So we appreciate that and the work that you and your team do, and keep doing those good things. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
I'll just call for a receive and note. Councillor Bird, Councillor Wills, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Philip.
Thanks.
Now we'll go to the Argentine Art Gallery and call Cara. Welcome, Cara. Just leave you to speak to your report in any way you wish.
Kia ora, thank you. So the 2021 year was both a successful year and one of challenges. We got to celebrate our 65th year of being open to the public as a public art gallery. We achieved our highest visitors in the month of July, the majority coming to our Matariki Festival, which was run over three consecutive nights. There was a wonderful collaboration with our community, our local marae out of Whenua, and being in chance to engage with our community wider than normal. We improved our visitor numbers this year. We achieved 16 exhibitions, and with the majority focus on our community. So 6 of those were local, 3 national, 4 collection-based exhibitions, and 2 international. We managed to celebrate 36 public programs, and the majority of those were achieved before the August lockdown. So we're very proud of that. With the challenges of COVID, we managed to use our public talks, which were recorded. We adapted openings to be award ceremonies online, and we have 23 published online content through YouTube and videos about our collection and public talks. Thank you.
Thank you, Cara. Questions of Cara? Comments? Don't see anything there. Gavin's relaxed. Councillor O'Reilly, he's been flushed out. Yes, indeed.
I just congratulate you on using all of the grounds for the lighting show and the opera too, in there. So it's great to utilise, the old building does get some criticism about why it's there, but I think when you start doing things like that, it makes it sort of stand out that much better. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Look, Cara, thank you for what you are doing and the work that's going on with the rebuild potentially for the Argentine, and lots of good work going on there, and your team supportive of that naturally, and we appreciate the input that you're having with your team. So keep up the good work, and thank you very much.
I'd just like to thank the staff for a challenging year and being able to adapt to changes, and thank you to the council and the Friends of Eggintosh for supporting us all the way through. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now we're looking to receive a note. Councillor Burt, the worship. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Righto. So the way I recall it here, we have no urgent business. We have no minor nature. We will now move to exclude the public. Councillor Burt, his worship. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye.
No, it's just the Fitch report, mate, is the only substantive item on yours, Councillor Burt. Yeah, it's really. Yeah. Thank you. Then the minutes of the public school minutes. Yeah. Yes, level 2, I was thinking of that on. Yes. Need to go to green, but an orange, you've got that level 2, good. Yeah. It's all about complicated stuff. I think around the libraries we might be able to move. Just yeah, well, thanks. Yes, it would make a big difference to the number of people in it. Yeah, that's probably the least risk too. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, still.
Okay, kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome to the Commission on Strategy Committee meeting. I call for apologies, and one is from Barbara, Councillor Gilchrist. I don't have any other ones. Could someone move those? Thank you. Councillor O'Reilly and Councillor Parker. All those in favour? Against? So moved. Identification of urgent business. I have none. I have none of a minor nature. Moving on to conflicts of interest. No conflicts of interest. The chairman's report. I was at various meetings where I did see Councillor Lyon. DLC reviews, workshops, 3 water meetings, council meeting, future of government Zoom meeting, Aireki Stadium, and met with the GM for commercial and strategy. I'd like to move that be accepted, and Councillor Parker second. All those in favour? Against, so carried. Confirmation of minutes, point 6.1 on page 6. For those, could we have someone to move those minutes? So moved Councillor Lyon and seconded Councillor Booth. Any conversation around that? No questions, and all those in favour? Against, so moved. Moving to reports, point 7, 7.1, the credit rating review, and I'd like to call Azora forward to talk to us about our Fitch AA- rating that we've obtained. Thank you. The floor's yours. Oops.
Good afternoon all. So I take the report as read. A very good outcome in terms of the management view. We've been able to retain the AA- rating. We're still going forward with a very strong outlook. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take it.
Thanks, Azora. So I guess we're taking on a bit more debt. And will that have an effect on our report at some point?
Yes, so they have in this report considered that. And I guess the fact that we had some heading come in has helped us at this point in time. But of course, going forward, we need to keep looking at that space and making sure we continue to mitigate that.
So when they say stronger than mid-range, if there was something not so good, it would be weak.
Yes, yeah. And some of it is quite different in the way that Fitch rate it compared to others. So some of them, they look at the net debt, whereas some just look at your total debt, and that's where the commentary is different. Whereas obviously for the purpose of our reporting, we always look at net debt. So that's something to be mindful of.
Okay, no, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, just to thank you. To your point, Councillor Booth, they looked at what I guess is your ability to pay back through your cash flows. So in actual fact, Council's decision to increase its rates last year, it was a quite significantly positive effect because it drove the cash flow up, as you'll see in the annual report. We've generated quite a bit more operating cash flow, which is a strong point. I mean, this to a lot of people it might be dry, but this is actually a pretty important piece of paper for us because it determines the price we pay for our money. And if we don't have a rating, or the rating is not an investment grade, a good quality investment grade one, then we would pay more, potentially 0.5% more, which on the sort of numbers we've got is not an insignificant amount of money. So it does have some real value for us, tangible value.
Thank you, Zora. Just make that comment that you know, we're in trying times. We've taken on significant amount of projects that require a lot of attention and time that will go into this, and also the reporting in terms of the quality of the reporting now that we get, it's better than it ever has been, and there's a lot of tension around making sure that we're getting this right, rightly so, from councillors and from the public. So really congratulations for where we're going with that. Thank you very much. So I'd like to move that. Someone like to move that, Councillor O'Reilly, and second Councillor Booth. All those in favour? Against, so carried. Thank you. I'll move into, I believe, go back to my yeah, I've got no matters of urgent or minor nature. We'll go to excluding business public, and thank you for an example set to me by Councillor Parker earlier to pass that test with flying colours. Someone would like to move into public excluded. Councillor Parker, thank you, and second Councillor Riley. So quick. All those in favour? Against, so moved. In there we